This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, very good, folks. So exciting to be here today and for our first class and teach you anatomy and physiology and looking at chapter 1, the really a foundational chapter for the rest of this course and the next course, AMP2. So let's look at the first slide, and I'm going to put it on slideshow here. So when we're thinking about anatomy and physiology, the terms that describe this course, we're thinking of structure and function. Okay, so anatomy is the structures of the body that we'll be learning in the lab as well as in lecture, and physiology, so the function, how these parts are actually working with all the chemical processes, the metabolic activity that's taking place within the human body. I have to tell you that, so the anatomy portion can be a little bit more simpler in that, okay, I can memorize terms, I can remember different things along the lines of the different bones and the parts of the bones and the names, but the actual physiological function, how the body and the parts actually work, can be a little bit more challenging. But you know what? You can do it. Those that have come before you have done it, and there will be those that will come after you that will do it. And so you will accomplish that task by doing well in this class. I would tell you that you need to, so I'm going to stop sharing for one moment, and I'm actually going to put in the chat box here. So you should get flashcards. So I'll post this in just one moment. Flashcards, you should get 3 by 5 cards to make your own terms, medical term flashcards, yeah, terminology. And I'm going to give you a couple websites. So innerbody.com, Get Body Smart, getbodysmart.com, and Histology World. Okay, I'm posting this in the chat area so you can access that information. So flashcards. I like the flashcards that are the Frank Netter flashcards. I think that they're excellent. I use them when I use the textbook that he actually illustrated when I was in graduate school, back going like almost 30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago. So actually 32 years ago. Well, when I was in my gross anatomy class. But very good, excellent artist. I really like those. So Frank Netter, I'll put that name up here too. All right. I've also given you, as far as telling you get the 3 by 5 cards, you're going to learn medical terminology as the class goes on. So you need to have the term on one side and the definition on the other side. And that can be for any of the terms that you're learning in this course. I would recommend that you do that. Innerbody.com, getbodysmart.com, histologyworld.com. Those are just a few of the websites that you can check out that are free that can be helpful for you studying for this class. I'm going to share my screen with you again. All right, folks. So yeah, so those are some different things that you need to do. Time management is very important with this course also. Again, I said before earlier that really you need to focus on this class each day of the week, okay? So you need to spend time studying each day of the week. You cannot cram this information a day or two prior to a test. That won't work, that won't happen. And know this, that you need this information because you're not gonna be working with, like Will was talking about, horses. You're not gonna be working with small animals. Your patients are gonna be people, humans, right? And as such, human anatomy is what you need to be a master of. So very important for you folks not to forget this information, but to really learn this information for the long haul. Now, you'll see here, as far as this term pathology, the study of disease or disease, the lack of properly functioning parts of the body, right? And the different physiological processes, the metabolic activity of the body. When there's disease, this really can put a wrench in the works, so to speak. I'm going to do something for you right now. Play a little bit of something from YouTube for you all that I think you'll find a little bit comical, but you'll understand why I'm doing this in just a moment. So take a listen to this for me, please, and then we'll talk. Okay, so that was a little cringy, right? Um, why was I sharing that with you all? So it's a youth, it's a kids orchestra, right? And doesn't sound too good. Sounds pretty, pretty bad actually. I've been to concerts where it's been like that, and it's a little like whoa. Uh, but here's the thing: I didn't do that to make fun of kids, right? I love children. I love my kids, and again, they've been a part of these concerts where it's like, oh yikes. But here's the thing: think of the human body. Think of the human body as the different organs and the organ systems as an orchestra. Imagine that there are different instruments in the orchestra. When they're all playing well, right? So if you've ever been to a concert and heard beautiful music, even if you don't like orchestral music, oh, that's pretty funny. And you've heard beautiful music, and even if you don't like it per se, you can still appreciate beautiful music, right? And so think about the human body having these, when you're healthy and well, right? That all the organs, all the instruments, they're playing well, and they're playing like they really should, like they should sound. But imagine when there's disease, when there's pathology present, and some of the organ systems or organs are not working well, or multiple organ systems are not functioning well, what happens? This is a disease state. This is a state of the body being unhealthy, unwell, and really very challenging for patients. So know that when patients come into the office, into the clinic, into the hospital, they're not coming because they're really, most of the time, because they're happy to be there. They're coming because they're stressed out, they're in pain and discomfort, they're scared, they don't know what's going on, and they're coming to you and your team to be able to determine what's going on with that patient. And so realize that this can be a very stressful job, but we need to just be able to take that and not internalize that stress, but be able to process that and help our patients. So it's a wonderful thing. I can't even tell you how good it makes you feel when a patient says to you, "I can't believe how much better I feel because of what you've done." And that's an awesome thing. As doing what I did as far as my treatment of the musculoskeletal system, I was able to help thousands of people over the years. I mean, it was just amazing and remarkable. Um, and so you'll get to that place, and you'll get to that area where you can, receive the satisfaction from helping someone else. And you know what? Not all the time do they say thank you, and that's okay, because we don't do it for thanks. We do it because we want to make a difference in the world and help others. So coming back to anatomy and physiology, we're looking here at the um, reference system. So directional terms, planes, cavities, structural units. We're going to look at that in just as coming up slides here. So here we have gross and microscopic examinations. So gross anatomy would be you're looking at the human body. You don't need to magnify any region. You're just looking at it with your eyes, unless you have glasses, right? But you're just looking at the different areas and body systems. In lab, you'll be doing gross anatomy as far as looking at some structures that you're going to actually that you might have opportunity to dissect as far as the brain is concerned for this semester. Next semester, an eye, a kidney, that kind of a thing, as well as looking at all the models that we have in our laboratory. Okay, so very important that we'll be able to learn the gross anatomical structures of the human body. Then we get to microscopic anatomy, and we'll be looking at in the beginning of the semester as far as histology in particular. Histology is the study of tissues. The tissues are comprised of cells. So cytology, and histology work in conjunction with each other, and you're going to be able to learn that we have epithelial tissue, we have muscular tissue, we have nervous tissue, right? We have connective tissue, and you'll learn the differences between them and be able to identify these structures, again, under magnification. And you'll see here, as far as the different types of physiology are concerned, understand that physiology can be very challenging, but it can also be fascinating to see how the different areas of the body are able to maintain a term called homeostasis, a homeostasis where there's a stable environment within, no matter what goes on outside of the body. So I could be in the freezing cold outside, I can be in the wet, I can be in the dry, I can be in the heat. Well, no matter what it is, folks, physiologically, as long as my body is functioning in a normal state, I can keep the different values as far as set points of your temperature, your body temperature, your respiratory rate, your heart rate, levels of different chemicals, ion concentrations, so like potassium ions, sodium ions, chloride ions, calcium ions, different chemicals and hormones and whatever it may be that's present and flowing through your body. We're able to maintain healthy ranges of these chemicals, of these limits, of these different types of, like I said, heart rate, respiratory rate, and that's as a result of the body maintaining what's called homeostasis, and it's the organ systems working together in order to do that. We'll go into more detail regarding that. Body position. So the body position really is the body, you're standing with your palms facing forward, face facing forward. So this is the anterior of your body, the front of your body, okay? And I'll show you an image in just one moment that'll show you, represent the anatomical position. Other body positions, so you're laying on your stomach, that's supine. You're laying on your, you're laying on your stomach, that's prone. You're laying on your back, that's supine. So in my chiropractic treatment and such, so I'd have patients laying on their stomach for examination of their spine and doing adjustments of their spine, laying on the prone position, and then laying on their back on my chiropractic tables in order to, with their face up, lying face up, supine position, in order to adjust their neck and work with their hips and such. So very important to know these terms. We also have terms like, let's show right here. So superior, aka cranial, inferior, aka caudal, okay? We have medial, closer to the midline, and lateral, further away from the midline, proximal and distal. So the hands are distal from the shoulder, and the elbow is more proximal to the shoulder, okay? So near and far. And anterior and posterior, anterior, aka ventral, posterior, aka dorsal. The way I like to look at it is, if you're thinking of the dorsal fin, you're thinking of the fin of the shark that's on the back of the shark, right? That dorsal fin. So think of the posterior. So that's how I think anterior and posterior, ventral and dorsal, okay? You need to know these terms. You need to just be able to memorize them and know them. Also, this image right here, except for the fact that the hands are facing the sides, we would want the hands facing anterior, or palms facing forward, anterior, then that would be the true anatomical position. So this is almost the anatomical position, except the hands need to be palms facing forward, okay, at the sides. So you need to know all these terms, and the term AKA, also known as, you'll need to know the many AKAs that are present in human anatomy, okay? That's a little stressful and challenging, but that's just the fact of the matter for understanding medical terminology. And I know that, it's tough for you all learning medical terminology while you're taking anatomy. So like I said, creating your own 3x5 cards that have terms on one side and definitions on the other can be very helpful for you, and reviewing those over and over and over. Repetition is key. Not just looking at something once, twice, 3 or 4 times. Looking at something 10 and 20 and 30 times is really what really gets that information embedded into your brain and into your memory. The body planes. So we have here, as far as sagittal and mid-sagittal, we have frontal, aka coronal, transverse, aka a cross section, or we can say even the horizontal plane. So let's take a look at that. Here we're now here. Oh, come back for a moment. I'm going to escape this for a moment here, and I want to show you that you can increase the actual size of your image here on this PowerPoint. And I'm going to stop sharing for just one moment, and I might have to, let's see here. Okay. I was getting some feedback. Okay, Olivia, I'm going to mute you. There you go. That was coming back feedback-wise. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. All right, so you just click on it, and then you can stretch this image. All right, so this way it makes it much more easy to study. Okay, go back to slideshow. Here we go. So now we have this image. It's easier to see, and we're looking at, so the blue right here would be separating the body as far as mid-sagittal plane would be into a right half and a left half. They're equal on both sides. But we can also have a sagittal plane where I say the sagittal plane was right here, and it separated the body into a right portion and a left portion. They're unequal, but equal would be mid-sagittal plane, would separate the body into a right and left halves. Okay, so the equal as far as the distance and such. The coronal, aka the frontal plane right here. So this would be right here. It separates the body into an anterior and a posterior aspect. The transverse, aka the horizontal plane, separates the body into a superior and an inferior portion. Okay, so those are the planes of the body. We've talked about, mentioned about these body cavities, right? So let's take a look at this image here. So we're looking at an anterior image and we're looking at a lateral view, okay? On the lateral view, we can see this dorsal cavity, aka the posterior cavity, which will contain cranial cavity and the spinal cavity, right there. The cranial cavity contains the brain, spinal cavity contains the spinal cord, okay? That's the dorsal cavity. The ventral cavity, aka the anterior cavity, right, would contain the thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic cavities, okay? And you'll see here also that in the midline here of the thoracic cavity would be the mediastinum. The mediastinum would contain the heart as well as great blood vessels. You're just seeing the spine showing through, right? Here's the spine right here. You're seeing that show through into the thoracic as well as abdominal pelvic cavities. These membranes that we're talking about right here, serous membranes, they are membranes that have two layers. A visceral layer, which is the inner layer that actually has touching contact with the viscera. When we think of the term viscera, we think organs. So visceral layer is this membrane that is actually touching the organ. So if my hand is the heart, the visceral layer of the serous membrane is touching the actual heart itself. The parietal layer is on top of the visceral layer, and between them is a cavity. In that cavity contains this lubricating serous fluid. Okay? So all of you do this for a moment with me. Make your hands, rub your hands together. Now, what do you feel? Well, as you do that, you feel heat, okay? And so as a result of movement, heat can be produced. With these serous membranes covering your organs do have movement, some of them more than others, like your lungs, your heart, a lot of movement taking place. So would it make sense for your organs to develop a lot of heat? Know that, you know, we take an egg, right? Egg has proteins, and we put it in a hot pan, we add heat to it, and we cook it. It said that we denature the protein. We're changing the structure of the protein as a result of applying heat. So do we want to really apply heat to, like, how about brain tissue, nervous tissue? Do we want to apply the heat to that? So if a child has a high temperature, right? Can that cause brain damage? Can that cause damage to the tissues of the brain? Yes, it can. Very sensitive to that. So we don't want to, while it's okay to have a mild temperature, because that helps the body's immune system do what it needs to do and be more effective, but too high of a temperature, we have to be very careful because it can cause damage to the proteins of our body. Okay. These are just some examples of, for the heart, the lungs and thoracic cavity, and the abdominal pelvic cavity. Now you'll recognize this term because you've probably heard the term peritonitis, which is a life-threatening condition where the peritoneum, right, is inflamed and there's infection present, and it can spread throughout all the organs in the peritoneal cavity. And again, like I said, this can be life-threatening. How about a burst appendix? This can allow for contents of the colon to enter into the peritoneal cavity. And infection can also take place throughout and within. It's not good. How about also issues like, let's see here, diverticulitis, where we also have in the distal colon, where we're having these pockets of tissue that actually become infected and they can actually burst, or you have an ulcer that can take place in the stomach or the beginning of the small intestines, the duodenum, and this can lead to contents of those areas leaking into the peritoneal cavity. Again, all of this is not a good thing and can be devastating. Like I said to you earlier there regarding the thinking of the body as like an orchestra and the instruments that are playing together, know that there's, just like an orchestra is very organized in what it does, the human body, and at all levels there's organization. And really we would say even at the cellular level, it's not a simple cell. Cells are complex, to be honest, right? So there's a lot of complexity in a cell, but there's organization present throughout, from the very small cell to the actual organism itself. So let's start from here, the organism, and see that the organism is comprised of organ systems. These organ systems contain organs. These organs are comprised of and made up of tissues. Tissues contain cells, and cells are comprised of the chemicals. So different chemicals and molecules that are present that come together and form these different cells and tissues and organ systems, and the organism itself, you and your patients. So we would say the cell is the smallest structural unit of life, and we'll be looking at some cytology when we're looking at histology, the study of the different tissues and the cells that comprise those tissues. So you'll see here is that this is very important to just know right from the very beginning today. Memorize this right off: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. These are the 4 groups of tissues containing similar cells in these different tissues that will help to produce and combine and create the different organs of the body, right? So the different organs of the body are comprised of different tissues which contain similar cells, which are present in the skin, your integument, and throughout the whole body. So again here, that just going from the organization level, from cell to the tissue to the organs to the organ system, and then here we're going to be looking at right now the integumentary system as far as looking at the different body systems. I'm going to take us out for a moment here. I'm going to stop sharing for just my screen for one moment. I'm going to go over to the chat box, and I'm just going to put in something here. It's called Miss Curly Nerd. Okay, I'm posting it right now. You can take a look in the chat box. It says Miss Curly Nerd. Now I'm going to share my screen again. And what I'm going to show you is that Miss Curly Nerd represents the different body systems of the human body. So each of those letters represents a body system that you'll need to know. And when I go through these right now in the PowerPoint, not only will you have to know these terms, you'll have to know the organs that comprise the body system, as well as the functions of that body system. And they're all present within your PowerPoint here. So the integumentary system is your skin, as well as the supportive structures, so the hair, nails, sweat glands, sebaceous glands. Skeletal system, the bones, the cartilage, the membranous structures that contain the cartilage and that help to secure. So ligaments help to secure bone to bone. The muscular system contains the muscles themselves, connective tissue covering, which would be fascia, tendon sheaths, which connect and tendons themselves, which connect the muscle, anchoring it to the bone, and bursa, which contain structures that have synovial fluid present in order to allow for free movement of structures. We'll talk about that in more detail. So really, we'll be looking at the integumentary, skeletal system, muscular, and nervous system this semester. We'll finish up the nervous system next semester and look at all the other subsequent body systems. So the brain, the spinal cord. The brain and spinal cord create the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is everything else. So cranial nerves, peripheral nerves, spinal nerves, all these structures, those are the peripheral nervous system. The endocrine system contains these glands which produce hormones. These are chemical messengers that are sent throughout the body, whether local or distant, and will cause dramatic change. And really know that the nervous system and the endocrine system are what are controlling the body functions. But it's primarily the nervous system that has overall control over what takes place in the human body. So the cardiovascular system, we're looking at the heart and the blood vessels, as well as the blood itself. Lymphatic and the immune system. So the lymphatic system is an actual body structural system of glands and such, the lymph nodes, vessels, thymus gland, spleen. The immune system it's a functional system, and it contains the lymphatic system as well as the cardiovascular system, and being able to provide an immune function for the human body. The respiratory system is involved in the fact that your lungs are taking in gases and exhaling waste gases, right? Oxygen, CO2. The digestive system, we're taking in nutrients and we're processing them. So we're taking in animal and plant proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and we're converting them to human proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Pretty cool stuff. And producing waste, as well as the urinary system, processing and releasing urine from the body. We're filtering blood and we're producing a filtrate, which will eventually become urine, which will exit the body. And know that for all of the filtration that's taking place, and we produce a lot of filtrate, we're reabsorbing most of everything that we produce in the filtrate, except for approximately 1% of that filtrate, it's exiting the body. And the reproductive system. So for male and female, and we're looking at the reproduction system maturing as we get to puberty, and then being able to maintain the sexual characteristics and assure the survival of the species as far as reproducing of our own kind, right? Pretty cool stuff. This is a good page giving you characteristics of life. They're showing you here from the organizational level that we've showed you before. I've mentioned the term metabolism. This is the different reactions, the chemical reactions that occur. We're going to be talking about catabolic activity and anabolic activity. You've probably heard the term anabolic. You've heard of anabolic steroids, right? And so when you think of anabolic metabolism and anabolic reactions, they are reactions that are going to synthesize, produce something. Catabolic activity is going to take larger molecules and break them down into smaller individual molecules, right? And that will have more complex structures that are broken down catabolically and broken down into more in smaller structures. So we're going to be looking at the ability to absorb certain nutrients when they're catabolically broken down, right? By the digestive system, and then absorb. So we can absorb glucose into the body cells, right? But we can't absorb glycogen. Glycogen is a larger molecule than glucose, which is a monosaccharide, okay? Responsiveness, growth, development, reproduction. These, again, all characteristics of life. Now, I'd like to end the class today with this term, homeostasis. I mentioned it to you earlier, and we'll finish this slide presentation next class. But I want you to see that homeostasis, the state of balance of the internal body environment, it's this stability that's present within the body. No matter what's going on outside of the body, right, we will still maintain levels of within normal range for our heart rate, for our respiratory rate, for our blood pressure, right, for our temperature. There'll be a healthy range. The set point, now, years ago, 98.6 Fahrenheit was what we would say as far as temperature is concerned. Really, that temperature has dropped, okay? That the average temperature for a human, much less than 98.6 Fahrenheit, okay? You've all noticed this because you've all had your temperature taken when you go into a facility, right? Like coming into school or whatever, and you're like, whoa, my body temp seems pretty low. Well, it's just, that's what's gone on over the years that it's changed, okay? But it's a set point, it's a certain value. 120/80 for blood pressure, for normal blood pressure, that's the set point, but it could be a little bit above, a little bit below. Understood, that's within a healthy range, okay, that range there. When we go above the range or below the range, above the set point, below the set point, that can be an issue, That could be that there's some type of disease process going on, some type of infection, whatever it may be. There's something going on that's not working right. And so what says here, when the body maintains homeostasis, everything functions in harmony, there's a healthy state. So when the body is able to keep at normal range, right, within that normal range, we're healthy. Above or below, that's not good. Now, there's two ways that the body can do this. Via, we would have positive feedback and negative feedback. Negative feedback is the way that we're able to, in a healthy manner, bring the set point back to where it needs. So when the set point has gone too high, so say the body temperature is 102.5, that's high, right? We want to bring that back to the healthy set point. So the body will do negative feedback mechanisms. You'll sweat, right? You'll get flushed, right? Because we're dilating the blood vessels and allowing more heat to leave the body through the surface, right? These are methods that the body can do in order to negatively feedback a mechanism so that we can actually bring and lower the temperature back to its set point and within the normal range. If we have a process that occurs where so say we have a set point, here's the normal range, and it goes above the normal range, and then what will happen is that something occurs where the body temperature goes even higher, right? Goes further away from the set point. That's a positive feedback mechanism that's not good, not healthy, right? Think in terms of, like I said, how about your blood pressure? If the blood pressure is at 120/80 and yet it goes up high, 140/90, and then how about if it goes even higher, 150/over 110, right? We need to bring that back down via negative feedback mechanisms. The only way that positive feedback mechanisms are good or healthy would be in terms of stopping blood flow as far as damage to blood vessels, so you're bleeding, or how about in the sense of a patient is giving birth, right? And we're increasing the strength of the contractions, and then the time gets shorter between the contractions in order to birth a baby. Those are examples of positive feedback mechanisms that are healthy. Other than that, it's only negative feedback that we really work to bring the values back to the proper set point within normal range as far as maintaining homeostasis. Stop for that today. I'm going to stop the recording.